Hello, viewers, and welcome to the latest GI Huddle. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit more UK-centric, Cheltenham Festival, and I'm with Alex Donoghue, Managing Director of Pressbox PR, and Jack Mansell, Director of Pressbox PR. Gents, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for having us, Tim.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Looking forward to, as I say, getting into kind of horse racing in Cheltenham. I'm going to open up with an easy one. How was the festival for you guys?
I think, from a personal point of view, Tim, I think it was refreshing to see Cheltenham back. I think it probably felt to me like it was the first Cheltenham post-COVID where the crowds were back, the atmosphere was back, the energy was back, and I guess for us, as an agency, the kind of the client demand was back, and all of those things. I think a prosperous and healthy Cheltenham is clearly a prosperous and healthy Cheltenham for the entire industry. So it was great to see it return to its former glories.
Yeah,
I couldn't add much more to it than Jack's really well summed up there. And I think Jack's right in terms of the health, it being a barometer for the health of the industry. We saw lots of clients, operators, affiliates wanting to try and use Cheltenham as a way of appealing to a wider audience as well, which is quite a good sign as well, I think. And we saw a good response from media and kind of areas of society that possibly wouldn't necessarily follow racing week in, week out, that really got involved in Cheltenham and saw it as a big sporting and entertainment event. I should add as well, having been down there for 3 days and then also having a bet on Friday, I actually made money for the first time in about 15 years at Cheltenham as well. So that's the first time for everything.
Nice. Lucky for some. I wasn't so lucky, but it wasn't too bad either. And I had fun for the bets that I did lose. So. My next question, I'm going to go to Jack. Feel free to chime in, but I'm going to go to Alex first with this one. Overall, did the bookies have a good or bad Cheltenham?
I think they had a great Cheltenham. Actually, I've got a couple of statistics here. I have to credit Regulus Partners here for being the source of it from one of their very informative emails. But it looks like the bookies had a great Cheltenham. Overround improved massively, 16% improvement in overround. Margins were up. I think that's down to the field sizes. So we had 444 runners at Cheltenham this year compared to 405 last year. So that means the average field size was 15.9, nearly 16. Simplistic bookmaking mathematics suggests that the bigger the field size, the more overround, the more margin there is, and the better that will be for bookmakers in the long term. Results were better than have been in previous years. So there were 8 winning favourites from 28 races, down from 12. I think it's fair to say that the punters generally didn't have a great festival, particularly the punters who are backing, the public horses and backing the horses that they have, the storied horses and the horses that they think will win. It looked like a pretty torrid run of results middle of the week. I think on Tuesday there were a fair few punter-friendly horses that went in. Wednesday was okay. I think Thursday the punters definitely drew a blank. And then on Gold Cup Day, although the favourite did win the Gold Cup, there were a couple of results that went more in favour of the bookmakers. But yeah, from looking at the statistics that I have here, it looks like it was a pretty profitable Cheltenham. I think anecdotally speaking to a couple of the bookmakers and affiliates that we're close to, of course not wishing to give anything confidential away, but it sounds like there was a real strong uptake of betting interest from recreational customers and people that don't normally bet on horse racing, which is a really key thing for Cheltenham, being a shop window for the sport. Average stakes were pretty healthy. I think there was some suspicion that stakes might be declining a little bit, possibly due to cost of living, possibly due to people wanting to have a bet on many more of the races and spread their entertainment value around. But it looks like the bookmakers did well margin-wise and also did do really well in terms of attracting a new audience coming to bet on horse racing, which does stand the sport in great stead for the future.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the new audience, that's something we'll check in on a bit more specifically later on. You mentioned the Friday, there were some more favourable results. I do remember there was the one race where a 66-1 shot won, so I think that was definitely one of the more unexpected results.
Yeah, if you hadn't backed the winner of the Gold Cup and then you were looking to try and redeem yourself in the Fox Hunters, I don't think many people were able to use that to their advantage when the 66-1 shot romped home in the Amateurs Gold Cup. But yeah, there were. That's what makes Cheltenham brilliant. I think if it's the biggest and best horses, but of course they don't always win. And I think that unpredictability in sporting drama is what makes it such an appealing sporting event and therefore betting event. If all the big horses turned up and won every single time, we wouldn't get these big field sizes because the others wouldn't want to come and give it a go. And it's these big field sizes which ultimately make it an entertaining proposition and more profitable for the industry as well. So long may that continue.
Yeah. Do either of you have any insights to kind of any bookies that any brands or operators that maybe did particularly better than others, or some that maybe didn't quite you know were as profitable as maybe some of their competitors? I mean,
I think
I'd say some of that is sensitive information, but yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the wash now in the kind of quarterly reports and the varying statements of the city thereafter for some of the bigger listed groups. I know that I think some of the firms, part of the bigger groups that have already reported post Cheltenham, have said that, reiterated what I mentioned there, that the numbers were healthy and lots of the factors they look for in terms of cross-selling the sport as a betting opportunity to new audiences were pretty healthy as well. I think, generally speaking, if the bigger firms are having a good Cheltenham, then I think everyone will mostly have a good Cheltenham unless anyone makes some sort of misjudged kind of marketing offers, and that's another point to make. Actually, I think in previous years Cheltenham seemed a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of the marketing offers, basically in terms of bookmakers just giving a bit too much away in a bid to attract customers. I think this year you saw the industry collectively rein that in a little bit, and there weren't as many generous bonuses, there weren't as many generous kind of money back and free bet offers, which didn't seem to dampen the uptake, which of course is great news for the bookmakers' marketing department budgets and margins as well. They don't feel like they have to give so much away to get people interested in betting on Cheltenham.
Sure. In terms of the marketing draw that the Cheltenham Festival is, I mean, so Alex, you mentioned already that it was a profitable one for operators, but something that we've heard from operators, even if bookmakers don't necessarily make money at Cheltenham, the feel good vibe and the headlines and the fact that you do have some winning punters genuinely kind of brings in new customers for the rest of the year. Is that very much the case every year? And I guess this year in particular, seeing as there was an added bonus of the operators made some money on it.
I think deferred to Jack's judgment really as a kind of wider sports PR expert really, but my view simply would be that if you see Rachel Blackmore and Honeysuckle on the evening news on the TV, there's no better shop window than that. The real test for the operators really will be making sure that people that had a bet at Cheltenham will come back for Aintree, not just for the Grand National either, but the Thursday and the Friday, and then eventually will they become the kind of customer that would watch the racing on a Saturday afternoon and have a bet at a smaller meeting and then potentially follow it really after that. But I think in terms of the wider cut through, I guess, Jack, you would have a view on that as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually it's very encouraging, Tim, to see that there is growing cut through for the sport into the mainstream, and I think that's got to be good, not least for the betting operators, but also for the sport's long-term prosperity. Really, I mean, it's racing's eternal problem of how you capitalise on the interest that Cheltenham provides, and create either repeat customers from a betting point of view or repeat spectators coming to the course. And I think clearly it's incumbent upon Cheltenham as a showpiece fixture in the calendar to deliver on both of those fronts. And I think, the early indications are that it certainly has from a betting point of view. And I guess, time will indeed tell now that we're out of COVID restrictions as to whether we can capitalise on this audience. But Alex is absolutely right. Seeing Rachel Blackmore on the front pages, in the evening news, can only be a good thing for the marketing of the sport for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, as you both, as you just said there, Jack, that we'll wait to find out kind of more numbers and more headlines. But given what you both kind of said there, is it fair to say that Cheltenham, this year has succeeded in appealing to a wider audience? Because I know that conversations the three of us have had and certain kind of companies in the industry that maybe work with yourselves have said that the eternal issue is, broadening that scope for horse racing.
Yeah, I think credit must go to the Jockey Club really and the authorities at Cheltenham for doing all they can to widen the interest in the sport. I mean, look, they took a bit of a risk at the start of the week with that DJ Cuddles Raw remix, which for the traditionalists is probably goes against the grain slightly. But, I'm a great believer that racing needs to try new things and test and learn. And I think clearly those sorts of initiatives did generate lots of coverage outside of the sport, which can only be a good thing, surely, for raising awareness. I think also credit must go to the authorities for actually making the brave call to improve the customer experience, because I know from firsthand at working at a racecourse that really the bottom line requirement is to get punters through the door, and that customer experiences tend to be overlooked for racing fans for quite a long time. And I think clearly limiting the numbers on each day has helped alleviate a lot of the pinch points that Cheltenham was facing with long queues for bars, long queues to get in and out of the race course, etc., etc. So I think what we have to keep in mind is, discretionary spend for everybody right now is tight. And so value for money that people have when they come racing to any fixture, but certainly for the big ones, it must be seen to be driving value for them. And I think clearly Cheltenham in its approach has attempted to appeal to the masses, but also give them a customer experience that they would expect, whether they're going for a day at the races or a day at Premier League football or whatever big event that they may be, looking to attend.
An interesting thing to think about in the post-white paper environment, where we'll see likely but restrictions on marketing of betting amongst sports like football. I do think that what Cheltenham kind of reminded the industry is that sports like racing, where betting and racing consumption go hand in hand, I think the industry we should see a big concerted push from the industry to make these big mainstream public betting events where you get people ideally betting 4 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see the industry try and push marketing spend into these events to make them bigger, so that people actually don't just bet at Cheltenham, but these other major midweek festivals, Goodwood, Royal Ascot, Aintree, that they can be sort of mini Cheltenhams. And actually, if the betting industry can't market itself extensively on the back of football, it will try and use the sports where it's welcome to market itself heavily to try and create more retention amongst people who had a bet at Cheltenham and now should come back for 5 days of Ascot.
So this year, were there any major talking points apart from everything that we've already mentioned? And were there any controversial talking points? Because I know in previous years there may have been. I know some people want the festival to go across to 5 days, and I know others are ardently against that. What are the kind of your thoughts, and what were the main talking points this year?
Well, I think if I go first, Tim, I think clearly, the starting gun for Cheltenham is tends to be fired pretty early doors in the sort of the turn of the year. But I think this year it was fired even earlier, sort of late last year, with this consultation coming back about the 5 days. And a personal view is I don't think we've heard the end of that. I think clearly there was a groundswell of opinion to keep it to 4 for now. But I think having seen the power of Cheltenham and what it delivers, clearly Cheltenham, as an existence of a racecourse, has to make a lot of money in those 4 days to sustain it year round. And I think it would probably be remiss of the industry not to explore that once again when the time arises, given the trajectory the meeting is on. I think the other contentious issues going into it were things issues regarding the whip, which has become, thankfully, wasn't the big issue that everyone thought it would be. Dress codes were a big topic of discussion in the run-up to. Again, I think you have to call out the brave decision by the Jockey Club to relax those. I think that will hopefully help bring in new audiences to the sport who perhaps felt that, the rather strict requirements in terms of what was needed to be worn at racecourses are now relaxed. And I think there is probably the other bigger issue for the sport, and indeed the potential dilution of quality, is just, the product that's on offer to racegoers and to those that are interested in betting. And that's, field sizes and the sort of current state of British racing, really. But I think as Alex's statistics back up, actually, the fact that there were more runners, less favourites, higher betting turnover, actually Cheltenham's not done a lot wrong in that regard. It's far exceeded expectations.
Just a few things I would add to that. And actually, where Jack ended there, I think they put on a great show for those attending, for those watching at home, for those sort of betting and streaming, and the numbers back that up. I think in terms of some of the points that I would add, in terms of the experience on the course, I think it still had been called out that the ticket prices were incredibly high, in excess of £100 for a standard ticket. That was possibly reflected in a little drop off in attendance each day. As Jack alluded to earlier, entertainment bang for buck is important in this day and age. But then at the same time, the newer audience that the sport's looking to attract might view £100 only as an equivalent to going to a music festival for the day or any other kind of bigger leisure activity. So maybe that's the route they're going down. In terms of some of the other talking points, I think the general state of British racing and the dominance of Irish racing emerged again, and it was probably even clearer actually how much better the Irish horses are than the British horses in the most part, and therefore how much of a stronger kind of training and breeding and training and purchasing and general kind of conveyor belt of quality that Ireland has. There's lots of talk amongst real racing circles about how Cheltenham gets bigger every year. The road to Cheltenham starts basically the minute Cheltenham finishes, and it's to the detriment of the rest of the sport. And whilst I think there's some merit in that, particularly because field sizes, even for bigger meetings, have been very, very small in the build-up, I do also think that you shouldn't try and cut your nose off to spite your face, and you should start trying to improve racing off the back of a strong Cheltenham, and thinking that making Cheltenham any less competitive would then in any way create a scenario where you can kind of spread things out throughout the year. I think there's definitely things that racing needs to do a little bit better throughout the year in terms of field sizes, in terms of things being competitive, but it shouldn't start by trying to kind of reduce the quality on offer at Cheltenham in order to maybe spread it around a little bit. I'd say as well that the broadcast was excellent, although my personal opinion is that they shouldn't shy away from the betting element of the broadcast. I think ITV do a brilliant job of appealing to everyone and making it a great, compelling entertainment proposition. But I do think that, particularly given the need post white paper for really sort of solid avenues for the betting industry to be marketing itself in an environment where it's welcome, I do think the broadcasters should really make as much of a focus on the betting element as possible, not shy away from that fact as well. That's more of a longer term thing than something relevant to this year's Cheltenham. But overall, I think they did a great job. They put on a great show, and that's ultimately what was reflected in the betting numbers as well, and I suspect the TV viewing figures too.
Mm-hmm. On the Irish point, I saw that Paddy Power did a pretty nice tongue-in-cheek advert with the Irish versus British, and I think there was, like I said, there was a clear winner in the end in that one. But overall, gents, thanks very much for your time. I think we went through kind of what could be improved longer term and next year, but certainly that this year Cheltenham, overall a roaring success. So thanks very much for your insights, and long may it continue. Look forward to the next one, but of course there's plenty more horse racing between now and the next Cheltenham anyway.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Tim.